my Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1202 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Electronic Products Recycling Association. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. And Canna Cabana. The lowest prices on cannabis. Guaranteed. Over 150 stores across the country. Learn more at cannacabana.com. Joining me this Saturday, the morning after the Toronto Star published an article exposing John Tory's affair with a Toronto City Hall staffer, is the man who led the reporting team at the Toronto Star, David Ryder. So, David, just a typical relaxing Saturday morning for you.
Yes, I don't know. I've got the whole day ahead of me.
Another boring news week in the city of Toronto.
City Hall is boring. That's what they told me when I took this job.
Look, I know you're a busy man, and we'll get right to it, but we're going to have to talk twice as fast as usual. Can you do that?
Sure.
I want you to name check, who at the Toronto Star worked on this, we'll call it the John Tory had an affair with a City Hall staffer story?
Oh, probably 15 people if you include lawyers and everybody else. But I will say, I led the reporting team, which was me, Ben Spur, and Alicia Hashem. And then the three main editors would be Doug Cudbore, Nicole McIntyre, and Jordan Himmelfarb. That would be kind of the main team, with big assists from people like Rob Benzie at Queen's Park and others who were also hearing some stuff.
Okay, so that leads to my my big question here. Like, how and when do you first learn about this story?
So this was a weird one. Like, sometimes you just get a tip and then there's the story. This one started with rumblings about John Tory's marriage going back actually before Christmas. And I made inquiries with the mayor's office. That's not normally like the kind of story we do in Canadian politics. You kind of leave their private life, but they have been a public power couple. So if they were going to make it official, we would do some kind of a story, not a big story. And, I just heard that back from them, which was basically like, yeah, there's some stuff, but, the mayor's not ready to talk about it. And I said, well, like, if papers are filed or something, I'll do a story. And they were like, fine. And then about, I'm going to say a week to 10 days ago, everything's a bit of a blur. We got a more and I keep hearing stuff like it was, I think among political circles, it was a bit of an open secret that Barb, the mayor's wife, had not been seen around at all, and that maybe there was some trouble in paradise. But then, about a week to 10 days ago, I got a very specific tip that, in fact, there was that the mayor was having or had a relationship with a specific woman who had worked in his office, and quite a bit of shock because he will be 69 in May, and the woman was now about 31. And was in her late 20s when she worked in the mayor's office. To be honest, I really didn't believe it. Like, I get tips all the time, and 95% of them are either completely wrong or at least a little bit wrong. There are certainly politicians, if I got this tip about, I would say, yeah, you know what, that sounds right. John Tory is known as a Boy Scout. He's known as at City Hall, they call him No Story Tory,
right.
Two Beer Tory if they're going out. That is kind of his brand. He took over from Rob Ford saying, I'm going to bring boring back to Toronto City Hall. And by and large, he did. And then, so I started putting out feelers, and a lot of people, surprising to me, a lot of people who he's really close to, who, might, they're going to tell me a little bit here and there. didn't know anything. But then I got one or two who said, I think I know what you're talking about. And then we just kind of kicked it into gear and kept pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where we had enough. We put in a round of first questions a week ago Friday, and then we had enough to put in very detailed, very specific questions yesterday. And then I was told we would get an answer back. And then within an hour, he had called the news conference and quit.
Okay, so I want to get this sequence of events right. So you basically, you journalists at the Toronto Star tipped off John Tory that you were working on this story about, I guess, a week ago yesterday, so you had about 7 days before the story broke. Am I hearing
roughly,
that right?
Yeah.
Roughly like that. And by the way, so it sounds like, what started as like it doesn't take a journalist to realize that John Tory and his wife are not particularly close geographically, because we didn't see her around at all for this, this last election. And, I understand she's like been living in Florida, but obviously there was a lot of smoke as you investigate that story, and you were just simply digging in to find out if there was actually fire here, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's a lot of people from the outside who don't get involved in news kind of think everything we hear we just automatically throw up on the web.
Right.
There are sort of some kind of, I guess, people who are calling themselves media who that's kind of the way it works. No, not podcasters, but
well, not me, of course, because I actually, for what it's worth, that's not my bag. I would pass it on to real journalists with actual lawyers and let them do the proper story.
Yeah,
but continue.
I'm just joking, but we do a lot of discussion and a lot of debate about what constitutes news. And there's an old axiom that says just because it's of interest to the public doesn't mean it's public interest, and that's public interest in large capital letters that says something that is fair game for journalists.
Right.
So the main thing, I think, in the last week, like, we could have got to yesterday and just decided we're not going to do anything. And I think the main question we had to figure out for ourselves is, did this relationship start while she was in the office? Was this a relationship between, arguably the most powerful man in Toronto and a relatively junior, much younger, early career staffer? In the post-Me Too era, I think that raises all kinds of implications. If we had been assured and believed that nothing happened between them until she had moved into this other job, honestly, I think we probably would have not reported the story.
This is, from my perspective, the story is that this was a city hall staffer. Like, you're right. Maybe it's not a public interest that a man in a marriage with geographical difficulties has a consensual affair. That's a whole different ball of wax. But the fact that this affair was with a city hall staffer makes it, I think, a real news story that should be investigated and reported.
Yeah, and I think John Tory would, who's kind of a journalist himself, like he was on 1010 for all those years. I don't think he would debate it. And I think the fact that he resigned said that he understood the gravity of the mistake he made, which was all the more shocking because I really think most of us couldn't believe that he would make such a mistake.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my questions, which is, did you have any inkling at all that maybe he would resign when you press publish on that article?
Yes. I walked into that press conference knowing he was going to resign, but it was still shocking to me. And I'll just unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
So we're talking the story is heating up, and a lot of political people know we're asking questions, and it's kind of buzzing around different circles. I think on Thursday, my colleague Rob Benzie, who is very tapped into the Queen's Park and including the progressive conservative grapevine, which was buzzing very loudly, he said to me, people think he's going to have to quit. And at that point I was thinking, I don't think he, the kind of the trend in politics right now is to not resign, to just follow the Rob Ford or Donald Trump playbook and say, deny it or just say it doesn't matter. And then on Friday, it was getting louder, and I was hearing from my sources that he was at least considering quitting. And then when we put in our second round of questions, which, as I said, were extremely detailed,
Yeah.
I very heard quickly back, he doesn't think he can survive it. He's going to go. Wow. And I think the calculus for him was in his response to me, which was through a lawyer, and in the press conference, he is taking great pains to try to protect the woman involved and who we did not name. And I think there must have been some calculus on him that if he stayed in office, it was going to be a bit of a Rob Ford situation where everything he tried to show up to announce, garbage collection day, we would start asking him about his personal life and about this woman and about other things. And it was going to be, a greater chance that her privacy would be invaded. I have to think that traded into it. I've also heard that he was under some pressure from his family to take responsibility and basically take the fall.
Now, you mentioned there's almost an open secret. People knew you were working on this story. At least the insiders knew. Was there ever any possibility a different news outlet would go to press with this story before the Toronto Star?
I think there was a very strong possibility. I had information because, I would come to sources and then talk to them. And then a day or two later, they would say, I got a call from this outlet or that outlet. So my information is at least two other main Toronto news organizations were actively working on the story. We were the first to get enough credible information to put the questions into the mayor's office and to force an answer. So I think that's why we broke the story.
Now, you mentioned you didn't name the young woman, and I am not going to name the young woman right now either. But, since your story broke, Toronto Mike, has been fed the name of this woman and her occupation and so much details about this woman, but from several sources. So I'm just wondering, was that ever a consideration to actually include her as part of the story and maybe, where she works now being part of the story?
Yes, that was a very active conversation over the past week. If we do a story and especially if we break it and we're kind of like setting the tone, do we name her? There was a lot of debate, and I would say a final decision on that was not really made, and that was by my editor, Nicole. Final decision was not made until yesterday. We did reach out to her because there is an argument that sometimes by reflexively not naming or kind of leaving them out of the story, they might have something they want to say, right? We don't want to ignore her because then you might do the story and she comes out and says, what John Tory is saying is not true. We made multiple attempts, including going and knocking on the door of her condo and leaving a letter and leaving a card. Right. We made multiple attempts to find out from her, plus email addresses and everything else, to find out from her if she wanted to speak either on the record or on background, and we would get her side of the story and also whether she wanted to be named. And there are some cases where the other person does want to be named. We received absolutely no response. And we saw evidence investigating this, that there was attempts either by her directly or people around her to obscure her personal details, that I think she knew that there was going to be questions asked.
So here, as we speak, and don't worry, I know you're so busy and I'm almost done here, David. You've been amazing. Thank you for this. But it's 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Just got back from my kids' practice. So if I know the name of this woman, and again, like I said, it's not like one person said, it's this person. Multiple people all giving me the same name. It's only a matter, I should check online right now. This woman will be named, today. This will be someone, because there are institutions with less journalistic integrity than the Toronto Star, and you referenced them at the beginning. But this, I suspect this woman's name will be public at some point today, but not from me. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I feel badly for her, and whatever you think of anybody's kind of actions in romantic liaisons, what I fear is that social media right now, it can be so toxic, and especially towards women and young women. I mean, we can all imagine the kind of adjectives that are going to be thrown at her going forward. And I hope the other media outlets follow our lead, and that is our hope. And there was a debate about, do we include any details? We felt we had to, just to assure people that we actually know what we're talking about. If you just vaguely said he had a relationship with another person, that kind of like, we ran in the Rob Ford situation where, even after we reported a story, every which way, people said, well, maybe it's not that, or maybe this Toronto Star's lying. So we had to include some details that said, yes, this is a real thing. But I really hope that people are understanding that she's not a public figure, she's not a politician, and she has a right to privacy.
I agree with you there. 3 more quick questions. Is it at all frustrating to you, David, that there's this misconception out there that John Tory just decided on a Friday night to confess his sins and resign, when in fact we both know that the timing of that confession and resignation was 100% because the Toronto Star pressed publish in the content management system and went live with that story?
Yeah, sure. There's frustration. I've been on Twitter a little bit when people, because I've seen somebody who was, I think, like kind of put themselves out as like a media expert, was saying, well, there's obviously more to the story because he just did this. And I was saying, well, yeah, I was saying, for context, actually, he only did this because the Toronto Star, published the story. But, that's the nature of media. And, a lot of other media outlets, I heard CBC Radio this morning on their national news credit us. A lot are crediting, a lot aren't. And
the Toronto Sun didn't credit you because they just decided, he made a press conference, we'll just quote the press conference and ignore the impetus for the press conference.
Yeah, that's that's.
I see this stuff, David. I can. I'm out there defending you.
I will say there is a policy at the Toronto Star that when there's a big story that another outlet breaks, that we credit them with the break in doing our follow-up story.
Right, as you should. Is there any more to this story that you journalists at the Toronto Star are still chasing?
Yeah, there's a lot of threads. I mean, there is a debate, I guess, now on like how much more do we care about John Tory's private life, given that he will soon not be mayor anymore, and that we'll have to figure that out. I can say, I think generally, some people have said, was there anybody else? I don't know. I would say if there's somebody else and it was totally private and not anything to do with his office or his duties as mayor, I don't think we're actually going to spend time on that.
Right.
Yeah. But I think the big question, and I don't know how we'll get at it, but because I don't think the mayor's going to sit down with me anytime soon. The big question is what was in it, the old Hugh Grant question, I guess, like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, why, after being a political loser for so long and then winning and then, becoming a certified winner, why would he risk all of that for, a romantic alliance? And
I know. No story Tory, you called him earlier. This is why a lot of people, when they hear John Tory's sex scandal, this is like, those words don't belong together. Right?
No, I know. And that's why when I first got the tip, I honestly didn't believe it. I thought, well, I got to do my due diligence, but this isn't going to take very long.
Wow.
And then, all of a sudden I was seeing there might be some smoke there.
Wow.
But I mean, and the distance from Barb, it's true. His wife, I think, has mostly lived in Florida for the last while. The fact that she doesn't like politics is well known, and he's talked about it in the past. Mm-hmm. I mean, having said that, he is like a very wealthy man. If he had wanted to hop on a private jet every weekend, he could have. Right. Although he was almost working every weekend. I mean, I couldn't believe his schedule where he hit like 8 events on a weekend, and it seemed nuts. Maybe in hindsight, I guess he should have done a little less marrying and a little more kind of like, marrying, flying down and spending time. But that's for him and his wife to figure out.
All right, last question, David. There's a story circulating, and I have not done my due diligence to see if there's how much credence there is to this story. But there is a story circulating that Doug Ford will resign as premier and run for mayor of Toronto. Any truth to this? Is there anything there being followed by the good journalists at this?
I don't think at the moment, there's nothing credible. And I honestly, it would surprise me. I mean, having said that, the whole John Tory story surprised me. But as premier, he essentially is mayor. I mean, Doug Ford cut the size of council. He's cut funding for development charges. He tried to cut funding for public health before something called the COVID-19 came along. He has more control over Toronto City Hall than anybody, including the mayor. And he also, is a national figure who might have federal ambitions. So I would be surprised. But I've definitely had my phone is being pinging with that. Other people are saying maybe he'll send Michael Ford, who's an MPP. Maybe he'll want Michael Ford to be a mayor, and then it'll be a kind of a Ford tag team, running Ontario. There's a lot of speculation at the moment. I don't have anything credible.
Now, because you've been there for the and I know I said last question, but now just a thought that you were there for the Rob Ford 10 years. So it's almost like as big a story and as frenetic as this is, you're well trained for this. Like, it's like you must be going into that, I've been there, done that, just a typical day at the office. This is the way it is in Toronto politics now. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, we've been through worse, if you will, in the city.
Yeah, I'd say yesterday it wasn't a typical day. It was definitely high drama.
Right.
Behind the scenes and waiting for the story to hit, and then waiting for the mayor's press conference that we knew was coming. It was exciting and high drama. I would say, it definitely brought back maybe a little bit of PTSD about the Rob Ford years. John Tory has been mostly, I've been covering policy and things about the budget and all those other kinds of things. There hasn't been a lot of personal stuff. With Rob Ford, it was just such an onslaught. I mean, right. People forget that there was like 1,000 scandals before the scandal, and a lot of them were little, like reading while driving, or having his aides be football coaches on city time. Like there was right. all those things, and then there was him being blind drunk at the Garrison Ball, which was a predecessor to crack. Right. So that was just like an aerial bombardment, whereas this was just like one big explosion. Right. So all that to say, yes, it's not a regular day at the office, but I certainly have had this feeling before.
I have your colleague Ed Keenan visiting soon, and now we have something to talk about. So they're on the bright side. But thank you.
I should say Ed was right in the middle of reporting this as well. He was a valued team member.
Well, he was right in the middle of reporting the insurrection, the January 6th insurrection. So yes. Here you go once again. So we'll have Keenan on the show soon. But thank you for your service, FOTM David Ryder, and shout out to my painter.
Yeah, shout out to Chris Brown.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,202nd episode of Toronto Mic'd. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. David is at DM Ryder. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. And Canna Cabana are at Canna Cabana _. See you Monday when my guests are the dynamic duo from Goodnight Sunrise.
Jackass, just come in. Where you been? Because everything is coming
And I'll play this guitar just the best that I can. Maybe I'm not and maybe I am. Who gives a damn, because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything is rosy and gray. Well, I've kissed you in France, and I've kissed you in Spain. And I've kissed you in places I better not name. And I've seen the sun go down on Sacré-Cœur. But I like it much better going down on you. Yeah, you know that's true, because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms us today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything is rosy now. Everything is rosy, yeah. Everything is rosy and gray, yeah, yeah.
Mike, all I can say is congratulations on your 1,000th show. What an incredible milestone for your podcast. 1,000 episodes filled with stories and people and places that make up our great city. So thank you for being a champion of our city and for showcasing it on the Toronto Mike podcast. Here's to many more episodes.